The early days of horror games are hard to define, as most horror games before 1995 were action games with horror themes. Games were very well defined in the 8-bit and arcade eras, as many were built as side-scrollers where the objective was to reach the end and either avoid or eliminate obstacles. Games like Splatterhouse, Castlevania, and Ghouls and Ghosts are horror-themed side-scrollers in this vein. Looking at the aspects that made games like this part of the horror genre was very surface level, even for the time. They often showcased a lot of blood, gore, and violence, but many lacked what some may say is the most important aspect of a horror setting: atmosphere. Typically, a game would excel in one of these but falter in the other categories. There were exceptions. Sweet Home on the Famicom, for example, was an RPG survival horror game developed by Capcom and directed by Tokuro Fujiwara, whose most notable work before this was Ghosts and Goblins in the arcades and on the Famicom. Sweet Home was notable at the time of its release in 1989 for its emphasis on puzzles and inventory management with limited resources. Sound familiar? These traits would become staples of the genre moving forward. Fujiwara would go on to become a prominent figure at Capcom, both directing and producing many more iconic titles, including several Disney properties like Goof Troop on the Super Nintendo. But most notably Resident Evil. Resident Evil released in 1996 and was produced by Tokuro Fujiwara and directed by Shinji Mikami, whose previous work at Capcom nearly mirrored Fujiwara's, most notably Goof Troop on the Super Nintendo. Fancy that. Mikami and Fujiwara started the project to remake Sweet Home on modern platforms, which at the time was the PS1, the Saturn, and the PC. But they went above and beyond, not only revolutionizing the genre of gaming, but also setting a standard in the genre of horror. Resident Evil became a spectacle for being one of the most realistic horror experiences of its time. It takes inspiration from George Romero films and the like and creates a B-movie horror setting that feels eerie and realistic due to its innovative use of pre-rendered backgrounds. By this method, the game not only ran smoother than other horror games of the time, but also looked more photorealistic, making the setting feel even more real. It still utilized tank controls and limited inventory systems like Sweet Home, but also gave you an option between two protagonists, each with their own advantages and disadvantages, giving the player more agency over how they approach the game. The music was also notable for not being only harrowing and scary, but also gentle and reserved while in save rooms. To give the player an indication of a moment of reprieve. This duality music not only gets the player in a sense of dread and panic, but also a sense of calm, indicating safety, as well as a foreboding evil looming just outside. Resident Evil set the template for what horror games were supposed to be, utilizing the technology of the time to its advantage and creating something unique that would spawn a wave of imitators in the years to come. Instead of turning technical limitations on their head or innovating, many sought to try and imitate Resident Evil verbatim. And as a result, the imitators were always lacking something that Resident Evil games excelled at. But Konami published one such standout in 1999 that moved away from the B-movie ham of Resident Evil to delve deeper into the psychological aspect of horror, reinventing how people view the genre: Silent Hill. Developed by Team Silent and directed by first-time director Keiichiro Toyama, Silent Hill took all the elements of horror, taking inspiration from Stephen King's The Mist and cranking it to 11 in all facets. Firstly, the fog. Small draw distances were a common problem in early 3D games, as modern tech at the time could only render so many objects at a time. So Silent Hill uses draw distance as a gameplay feature to hide structures and enemies. This leaves the player to fear the ominous darkness that hides beyond what can be seen quite elegantly, as opposed to other games that would opt for claustrophobic spaces or open, empty areas. Since the backgrounds could be fully rendered under this guise, the camera could also be more fluid in the player's hands, as opposed to the fixed cameras of Resident Evil. This also allowed for more dramatic camera angles that swung and twisted and turned, which really adds to the atmosphere. There's also a massive emphasis on music, which was composed by Akira Yamaoka. The music is what makes Silent Hill's atmosphere as unnerving and terrifying as it is. Yamaoka utilized objects like dentist drills and power tools to create extremely disturbing and harrowing soundscapes. However, he didn't shy away from that calm and reserved style of music either. Yamaoka strikes a perfect balance of spine-chilling dread and terror with calm and meaningful rock opera. Finally, there's an emphasis on story. Harry Mason, the protagonist, is just a regular guy who's a writer looking for his daughter in this haunted town, which not only sets him as a relatable average Joe that the player can project on, but also allows the way that the player approaches the town to be more relatable as well. We want to find our daughter, we want to learn more about this town. This will lead the player through excellent environment designs that do a good job with environmental storytelling. All these elements mark not only why Silent Hill stands apart as a work of art, but also why its experience as a game, as opposed to any other form of media, is so imperative.